Hello folks, Doug Dalager with Explorer Superior here. I'm at National Bank of Commerce meeting with Bruce Thompson of the Better City Superior Initiative. So let's get to it and get some answers. Hi Bruce, thank you for meeting with me today.
Good to be here.
I appreciate your time. Please explain what exactly is Better City Superior?
Better City Superior is a group of business leaders in the community that were asked to form a 501c6 economic development corporation to really try and discover new ways to redevelop our downtown.
Okay, so why did you start Better City Superior?
Well, really we started it, we got introduced to Better City US through a development project and through our Superior Douglas County Development Association that was working with a group to bring a hotel to town. And we got exposed to the Better City US program, and that's when it piqued our interest, it piqued the mayor's interest, that maybe we could do something really dramatic for our town. And so that's when we felt that it was best that the business community come together and try and make it a reality, and that's where the corporation was formed, and that's where we capitalized the corporation primarily with funds from the private business community to get some answers and use real professionals to come up with some real cool solutions for our future.
Okay, well, let's talk inside baseball a little bit. You're talking about Matthew Gottfried with Better City?
Yes.
And he was formerly the mayor of what city?
Mayor of Ogden, Utah.
Okay, so why does he come highly recommended? What makes him the guy to help you with this?
Well, Matthew Godfrey was actually the youngest mayor in the country at one time, and he's a lifelong resident of Ogden, Utah. And when he began his career as mayor out there, it was 15 years ago, and Ogden, Utah was a very rundown, tired old railroad town. The highway had gone around, the railroads had left town. They had a vacant 100,000 square foot indoor mall in their downtown. They had terrible drugs and crime problems. It was considered the armpit of Utah. Very bad scenario from a very rich history. And so he didn't stand by and let that continue to dog him. They basically went at their poor assets and redeveloped them into fine assets and changed the whole appearance and quality of the community. And after 12 years in office, Ogden, Utah led the nation in job growth with 8,000 jobs. They had done $1.2 billion of reinvestment in Ogden. They now have the 6th best housing stock in the country. They've raised their average household income in Ogden, Utah by 20%, which is a huge number to move. And they only rely on their property taxpayers for 19% of their city budget, which is where I'd like to see us go, because we're about 44% of our city budget relying on property taxes now. So we have to do something. That's a goal to drive that down.
Wow, that's a significant number. I take it you must see some similarities on where Ogden was compared to where Superior is right now.
Yes, and I think Ogden actually was much worse off than Superior is now, and Matthew Godfrey would tell you that too, that the resources and the beauty, the environment, and the opportunity that he sees in Superior has a much better running start than he ever had in Ogden, Utah. And you know, Ogden's in his rearview mirror. He still lives there, of course, but he takes those talents to other cities around the country now and helps them tackle either small issues or maybe complete issues, downtowns, housing, different things, whatever they need. That's what he does for a living now, and he has a group of professionals that really know how to dig into these municipal issues, and so we're very fortunate. He's just an honorable, talented, passionate guy. I'm just so fortunate to have ever run into him.
Oh, that sounds great. Explain this to me now. Many people are predisposed to think that the city's wasting money, and maybe they're wasting money on this whole program. Who is behind Better City Superior? Is the city paying for this, or?
No, the private business community is predominantly the funder of all of the research that we've done. Now, we did get initially, the city gave us $25,000 the first year to get started, and then the county actually put in a little money as well, I think $5,000. The National Bank of Commerce put in $30,000 a year for the last 3 years.
Plus your time.
Plus my time. The private business community, again, by and large, has funded probably 3/4 to maybe even 80% of the cost of this to this point.
So the private business community must see some upside on this in the long run for them.
Absolutely, the private business community is just so supportive of it because they know in order for their businesses to grow, we need to grow this community. They know as well, many of them have long-term residents, they know the growth has not been here for over 50 years. And we can't continue to grow our companies when the environment around us is continuing to get smaller.
Nor can
And
you
poor.
employ more people, I
And you
presume.
can't employ, you can't find the employees you need, and you can't, earn the income that you need to stay around here.
So there's a synergistic aspect to this in that if you grow in one area of town, perhaps it's going to spread around and we'll sell more houses, et cetera.
Correct. It's all about quality of life. It's all about creating an environment that young people will want to live in, and that's where the future workforce lies, within those young people. That's where the employees of the employers will be in the future, is in communities that have a high quality of life. And so we need to modernize. We need to go after these community assets that are appealing to the millennial workforce. And in today's world, that's where the employers go. They follow the migration of the workforce. And we right now are struggling with a quality workforce from an environment and a community that always had a tremendous work ethic. It was very attractive. But in old days, you kind of used to throw money at companies to help them come to your community because you had the workforce. Now you really have to build the quality of community so the workers will want to live here and the employers will follow in and take advantage of that workforce.
And hopefully the youth of Superior will stay in their hometown
Yeah,
or come back.
That's been a discussion my whole life, is the brain drain and how kids leave, go away to college, and they don't come back. And I have one like that. I have one that stayed. But at the end of the day, we'd like to have our well-educated students that grow up in this community, that go to colleges in our region, stay and be productive in our communities for their lifetime. Because it is a great place to raise a family if we can turn around the derogatory things that are happening.
Sure. They have to see a future.
Yes.
I know that part of the plan with the Better City Superior initiative is something called an exposition district. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, that all came about because, early on, of course, we were told that the state of Wisconsin did not allow food and beverage consumption-based taxes. They do have them in Duluth, and they're very successful at utilizing them to grow that economy and draw more tourism up here. But in the beginning, when we put together the capital stack, which is how you bring the public portion of a public-private partnership, those monies together to get developers to want to do business with you, we put together an aggressive plan that pulled together lots of real new community assets that would complement Duluth and grow this region. But at the end of the day, our city does not have the political will. They have the bonding capacity, but they also have a lot of debt on the books right now, and they know that everyone is sensitive to property taxes, and they should be, because they're very high relative to other communities that have embarked on growth. So it was one of those issues where they really wanted us to do something like this, but they said, we really don't have any money to put into it. We can't, how can we play in this public-private partnership when we just don't have any money? And so our charge at that time was to try to find the money without impacting the taxpayers of Superior or the municipality. And in our research down in all of the legislative work that Better City US did for us, they found the exposition district legislation, and it only existed in Milwaukee, and it was done specifically for Milwaukee, and it does allow for a food and beverage tax within the district. So the fact that we were always told you can't have it in Wisconsin isn't exactly true, because you have to have a district to have it in Wisconsin, but you can have it if you have a district. And so we looked at the exposition district legislation and we said, well, this is a really good idea, and it works in Milwaukee, and it was designed specifically for them. But why can't the state consider modifying it for the benefit of a small market city like Superior, Wisconsin, that is competing against those tools right across the river in Duluth, and we're losing the game?
So can you explain what they do in Milwaukee with the exposition district?
And the exposition, it's called the Wisconsin Center District in Milwaukee. It's where the old Mecca, where the Milwaukee Bucks used to play before the Bradley Center. That is now a more multi-use facility. They have art theaters down there, they have hotels, they have convention center in the old Mecca. I think they call it the U.S. Cellular Arena now. But there's a border drawn around that district, and that district is allowed to charge these additional value-added taxes on the events that go on there, and if you stay in that hotel, and if you use a rental car in that district. So they've been given special privileges to charge extra for things because they've made an area in Milwaukee that is attractive for events and arts and such. So that district is able to bond based on those promised tax revenues. So they go to the private market and they bond for dollars. That brings chunks of money in to make big things happen along with private developers that then put up the hotels and things like that. And so we just thought that we're not reinventing the wheel here, we're just asking them to rebuild it for Superior specifically, because we are disadvantaged up here when we don't have those same tools in the market to grow, and we could use them to grow.
So in a sense, it's like seed money to get development going?
Yeah, it's part of the public-private partnership, and it's a way we get the money in lump sum up front to create the assets in the first place that will draw the tourists in. And because it's consumption-based or based on purchasing something specific, like in our case, prepared food and beverage, you go out to dinner, we tried to minimize that cost to the existing taxpayer by to make it a nickel, 0.5%, a nickel for every $10 that they spend. So if in fact you choose to dine out, and if we were successful to get this legislation changed, we would want it to be citywide because we think we're a small market and we have some additional needs to make it successful. But that would enable us and for that district to create those dollars that then we could go and court the private investment dollars to come in, really draw up the plans, really make the business models a success, draw that private capital and borrowed funds in on the private side, create the jobs, create the venues, and complement Duluth, bring more tourists to the area because ours will be, in some cases, unique assets that don't exist in the market right now. So Duluth brings in $3.5 million. If we could bring in 400,000 on our own, we would make this region then bringing in almost 4 million visitors, and we would start to get a piece of the pie.
The 400,000 is from what, sales tax?
The 400,000 is visitors we're hoping to bring in, and that would be because we would have a tournament play facility for families to bring their soccer, lacrosse players here up from the Twin Cities for those types of venues. A large indoor water park would be a huge draw if it was a Dell's scale, something really significant that would make this a destination for that sort of thing.
So bigger than the Edgewater in
much
Duluth?
Bigger, yes, yeah, really, a Dell's scale.
A real destination.
Yeah, and the same, we've talked about an indoor skydiving iFly. I've been in one of those, they have one in Ogden, it's a huge draw. They're generally in big markets, like Chicago has 2 of them, but Minneapolis doesn't have one. Milwaukee, Madison don't have them. And the fact that we've got 3.5 million visitors already coming up here, that in itself would draw more people, and there'd be a lot of the existing people that come to visit here who would want to do that. I don't know that the general population in Superior could afford a whole lot of it because it's kind of expensive to do, but it's so unique and it's such a draw that we would really create, something cool here. And that's just one idea.
Well, you don't go to Disneyland every day either, but once in a while you want to treat yourself, no doubt about it. So I hate to bring this up, but there is a certain amount of negativity in Superior about change. There seems to be an undercurrent of it'll never work. Why do you think this can possibly work in Superior, Wisconsin?
Well, because I've seen that it has worked elsewhere for one thing, and I've been alongside the people that have done it for another. And I saw where it came from before. It was in much worse shape than Superior, and the results were far more extraordinary than we're expecting for Superior. We're only talking about $100 million of redevelopment. They did $1.2 billion with a worse start than we had. I don't think we're going to create 8,000 jobs here, but they did. Mm-hmm. And do I think we can raise our average household income 20%? We're not shooting for that. And they did all of those things coming from a worse start than we've got. So do I think it can happen? Absolutely. And I know it can happen with with the guidance of people that have been down that road and know how to do it. If we were swimming on our own and didn't have the partners we have, then I would say it's a lot dicier. But the other beauty of it is anytime you have some capital to work with and you draw in professional outside interests that are going to invest their own capital, you bring a whole nother level of business acumen and talent. And if they can see the vision and they can make it happen, you're in with the right crowd.
Sure. I imagine it doesn't hurt that we're just across the bay from Duluth, which draws a considerable amount of tourists to that town.
Right, and that when we first brought American Resort International to town, they were more impressed with what they saw here than just hearing about it, because that was a dynamic that was like, whoa, you've already got 3.5 million people annually coming up right on your doorstep. That was pretty encouraging. That doesn't make it like we're starting the Wisconsin Dells when there was nothing in the Wisconsin Dells. This is like, whoa, you got a running start at this thing, so that's pretty cool.
Sure. So what is this going to cost me? You mentioned a 0.5% sales tax when I go out to eat.
Yes.
What else is my real estate taxes going up?
We're proposing 2.75% hotel motel, so lodging, which most residents don't pay. You don't stay in hotels in your own hometown usually. Rental car tax of 0.5%, and yes, the prepared food and beverage tax of 0.5%. So if you were to go to a local restaurant and have a sandwich for $10, it would cost you $10.05. That obviously is still quite a bit cheaper than eating in Duluth. It will cost you quite a bit more to have that same $10 sandwich over there. But the other thing you have to recognize is you don't have to go out to eat if you are on a tight budget, and that 5 cents makes a big difference. You could go to Super One and buy enough sandwich meat and bread to make 10 sandwiches and spend your $10 and not pay the nickel. So It is really a choice.
Explore Superior did a couple of stories recently addressing that very issue. We ate at Southwest Tap Room on Tower, just opened up, beautiful place. We also went to Southwest Tap Room in downtown Duluth. We went to Herbert's and Gerbert's, Grizzlies, and ordered the same thing, got comparable bills, and we noticed that the taxes in Duluth right now are about double what they are in Superior. And if we add another 0.5%, still significantly less than people are paying in Duluth for the same items.
Right, and the thing about dining out is usually it's more than just the food. It's an experience. It's a special occasion, or it's a different taste or whatever that you're looking for. And so, the added 50 cents or dollar or whatever gets tacked on, it's just part of the overall experience. And you make a conscious decision that you know that's going to be there when you go out and eat.
Plus you avoid the drive over the bridge. That doesn't hurt.
Yep.
Explain this to me. I know that the sales tax is a part of this. You also mentioned bonding, and I'm not real knowledgeable about bonding, but the Exposition District goes out and bonds for this, which I assume entails taking on some debt. Someone's going to have to buy that debt. How does that get paid back, and how do the taxpayers of Superior, what can you say to them to reassure them that this is not going to fall back on them should the developer have a hard time?
Right. Well, it's written right in the legislation that the Exposition District bonding has no municipal liability. So there is no liability back to the sponsoring municipality relative to those bonds. They are purchased by the private sector. You and I could probably purchase these bonds through a Wells Fargo bond fund or some other bond fund, and we are at risk. So at the end of the day, if a developer commits all of their capital along with their bank, who has reviewed everything and put their money into it, and for some reason you've created all this new tax increment with this new development, you commit it back to the project, somehow the project doesn't work out, those folks lose all their money. The community still has the assets and an opportunity to recruit new operators, new investment to rebuild it and move forward. And that's the way it works in our business all the time. For all of my life in this company and the 80 years prior to that, we have to be right 99.5% of the time. And at the end of the day, some don't work out, but you get your money back by turning those assets over and either getting somebody new in them. Sometimes you take a haircut, but the citizens, because this has no liability back to them, it wouldn't show up on your property taxes as an increase. In fact, the fact that we're in the tight high property tax scenario at all is because we haven't really done any growth activity for 30 years. And anybody will tell you that if you don't continue to grow your revenue and continue to move your business forward, your expenses will eat you up if you don't cultivate them in any way. And the landmass of Superior isn't changing. The crime is rising. Public Works still needs to plow the streets, 135 miles of streets in Douglas County. And there's certain overhead that has to be maintained, and people need to be paid, and people aren't paid what they were 20 years ago. So if you don't grow the top line revenue, the expenses are going to eat you up, and the only way they can continue to compensate for that without cutting out city services is raising property taxes. So that's why this is actually a counterbalance to what's actually happening. If we bring more people in to consume and spend money in our community and build more assets here, welcome more taxpayers into our community, ultimately we can not only turn around the fact that our property taxes can start, or our property values can start to increase again, but our relative property taxes should be able to be spread out over more people and lowered.
Okay, so perhaps by doing this development, bringing in more taxes through that, long term, we can control the real estate taxes on homeowners, and maybe they even go down at some point.
Right, we'd like to have them, again, like I say, Ogden only relies on property taxes for 19% of its city budget. They've been driving that down by creating new revenue sources through these enterprise zones that give them new revenues to give them little prizes such as property tax reductions, which everybody would want to see that.
So we build the exposition district, we build the hotel, we build the field house, we build the water park. What are the overall benefits to Superior as you see it if this gets done?
Well, first of all, we create new tax base and we create new jobs. We create higher density of employed people in the current downtown area. And we start to create new opportunity for activity and market rate housing in the downtown area as well, which is what is really appealing to the millennials. So if we can create the opportunity for more market rate housing in the downtown, it will also serve to fill in some of the other empty spots. More independent retailers, more independent restaurants will want to locate in our downtown, so you'd have more variety.
Sure.
For the local citizens, more attraction, more opportunities to draw new people over, grow the tax base, and
More people on the streets.
More people on the streets, better, streets lit up. Usually crime does not occur where there's a good number of people around. Where you have it is where it's dark and where there's vulnerability.
Sure.
And so by creating a district where there's lots of activity, I think you drive down that vulnerability for our existing residents, and hopefully we can start to squeeze the crime out of the community, because if there's more police on the streets, if there's more lights and more activity around, they can't get away with as much as they would like to get away with.
What do you say to the people that are concerned about gentrification?
Well, gentrification is a rather negative term typically used in development because it refers to the fact that perhaps at the expense of impoverished people, prosperity is brought in as a replacement. So in other words, you're taking over an impoverished area and bringing prosperity in, and well, a logical person would say, well, that's a good thing. Well, it is, but we have to be concerned about people of poverty as well. But we want to prepare a better place for them, frankly. And they may still be in downtown, but we'd like to have them downtown in better facilities. So, from gentrification standpoint, Superior is greatly impoverished. We are 2/3 of the state average in household income, so we are a poor community overall. Creating one area of prosperity in Superior would not be at the expense of poverty. We would still have plenty of poverty. It's a long road to eventually have a community where the rising tide floats all boats, and that there's better opportunity for everyone and better housing for everyone. That's the long vision and the long road, and it has to start somewhere. But to think of this in the sense that this is going to come at the expense of poverty is very far-fetched, because we have tremendous poverty, and we would never be displacing it. We would be looking to help them out of poverty, better situations.
Better City Superior is primarily about business, redeveloping downtown, making the downtown area nicer, more inviting to people who live here as well as tourists who may come to town to use the facilities or to just visit Superior. What do you say to those who say, why aren't we worrying about the housing for poor people in town? Why are we not worried about the aging housing stock? Why the focus on business?
Well, it's interesting in working with our professionals, and what I've learned through this process is that the housing piece of this is really the last thing that fills in, that fixes itself from redevelopment. And that's because of the private enterprise system working properly. When you drive economic prosperity, then you drive opportunity for redevelopment of housing. And then the profit motive is there to create new housing. And then because the city is moving in the right direction, people pay for the housing, and you start to get comparable sales then of rising values, and it kind of floats everybody's valuations up. And so, with this, there is a housing component, because in the downtown, we truly want to get market rate apartment living in downtown as well. But ultimately, we would be rising the tide for all homeowners, because when you then start to accumulate resources from your successes, you can start to attack some of the blight and some of the lower income areas that need more modern housing. That's what really dogs Superior is. One of the oldest housing stocks in the country, and it's falling down housing stock, and people in poverty are forced to live in very bad conditions. And so we need more resources from successful ventures to create better housing options for people of poverty and create more jobs, so that hopefully they can work themselves out of poverty in the first place. And so, that's all part of the equation, but it won't lead with housing. I've financed many of the housing developers that have tried to do housing developments in Superior. It's a very tough game. Many have come to this area, they've been successful elsewhere, they've tried it here. They can't build housing at a price point in Superior high enough for them to make it worth their while. So they're just spinning dollars. So why come? Because they could redeploy those assets in a Brainerd market or in a Stillwater market or someplace like that, where they can build $200,000 to $300,000 homes and make some money. Here they build $140,000 to $160,000 homes. They can sell them, but they can't make any money at it. So, and that's again why our housing stock continues to be of the age it is, because we can't get enough new investment into housing, but it won't happen until we make our community moving in the right direction.
So if we get Superior developing, growing and building, bringing more business to town, more jobs to town, you foresee that we'll get more residents,
Right.
we'll purchase these houses, and at some point in time the developers will say, yeah, I'm going to build some apartment complexes.
Right. Millennials, in this region, many of them living in Duluth have good jobs, but they also have the student loan debt, and it's going to take them years to get out of it. And so if we can bring them over here and put them in some market rate apartment housing over here and save them money, that's our opportunity to brand with them, have them enjoy living in Superior. Maybe 3 to 5 to 7 years from now, when they do get out from under that student loan debt, maybe then they would say, you know what, I want to build in Superior. I want to own a home in Superior. I like it here. I've been here for 5 years, and they really helped me out. It was more reasonable to live here. And that's how we start to rebuild, again, the reason to live here, the quality of life, the fact that once you get a few millennials living here and interacting with one another, they start to draw more of them in. You create that workforce that employers look around for. All of a sudden you get an employer calling your mayor, city mayor, saying, hey, I'd like to come to Superior. Can you find me a place to land? I see you got a good workforce there.
So you believe that development will spur more development down the road, and that it'll trickle down into more housing?
The housing will fix itself. That's the last thing. Yes.
Do you think that we'll see some of the really substandard housing go away and be replaced by new housing?
It really needs to be. When we do development here, we really need to do redevelopment. We need to take out some of the worst housing and replace it with some more modern housing for income levels that can support it. So every community needs good diversity, it needs good balance of income, it needs people of all income levels. We're right now so skewed to the low income and tired asset segment That's what makes this so important to turn around.
So it's not about chasing low-income people out of town?
No, in fact, they're some of the best neighbors you could ever ask for. And I know lots of people that live in poverty that go to work and work 40 to 50 hours, and they're best people you could possibly know.
So do me a favor and sum up in a nutshell what Better City Superior proposes for the redevelopment of downtown Superior. What's the scope of the project potentially? How big of an area, and where will it be?
Okay, it's about 10 to 12 acres to the north of 12th to Broadway, encompassing all the way to Oaks Avenue and to John Avenue. And with the way it's going in even further south between the 12th and 15th, there's some gaping holes, and those holes are getting bigger. Some of this could land there as well, as long as we're in a nice tight walking distance. We don't have to have skywalks necessarily like Duluth does. We have an opportunity to bolt together some very complementary, cool entertainment assets in a much tighter pattern than they exist in Duluth right now. Plus, they would be unique. So, it's sure there's going to have to be lots of cooperation. There's going to have to be capital so that people that are willing to cash out for fair market value have those opportunities. There's going to have to be negotiation with businesses that maybe could see that it would be better to be located out on South Tower anyways, and work out ways for them to accommodate their moves and such. And there may be businesses that want to stay, that can see a future in being around something like this, and we would have to work around all of that. Nobody would be displaced against their will. There would be options for everybody. That's why it's such a long process. But I think if you look at the tiredness of the assets around us down here, and the fact that there's no other way out, it would be a good opportunity to cash out during these times and actually put yourself in a better position. So, that's, these assets are still could be different than we're proposing. But again, we're relying on people who've done this elsewhere, who've studied this market and have come up with this as a good solution. And that's not to say it has to be the end solution. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, if we're not able to pull off as grand a scheme as this could be, and the developer comes to town and says, here, I've got these ideas to make this a really cool downtown, and they're willing to be the player that makes it happen, we should jump on that. Because no matter what we do, if we redefine ourselves, we're going to be better off than just waiting for something to happen or hanging another ribbon on the wishing tree at Belknap and Tower. Because we can wish all we want, but unless we do something purposely with strategy, it's not going to get any different.
Sure. There's a small strip of residential just on the other side of Tower here. Looks like a fairly aged housing stock there. Is that an area that you're...
Yes.
That's
Yes.
a possibility. Now, is there eminent domain in Wisconsin?
No, and there are many rental buildings, and there are many empty buildings, and there are some homes there, and there may be people that have lived there all their life and want to stay there all their life, mm-hmm. and they need to be respected. If several different options are put forth to them, they either don't want to modernize, maybe they want to stay downtown, and even in a more modern situation that's not to their liking, they want to stay where they're at. That's the way it's going to have to be. We'll have to work around them. I don't know that's the best thing in the long run for their property values necessarily, but if they want to be around the action and they want to stay where they're at, we'll do our best to, not infringe on anything.
So we're not going to see you on a Caterpillar with a hard hat knocking houses down?
Not unless we're able to fairly compensate people and start to remove those assets.
Okay, very good. So your next step here is an advisory referendum on November 8th. I know there's a couple other things on the ballot that are kind of important that day, but this means a lot to Better City Superior. Explain to people what an advisory referendum is, especially in this case.
Really, it has no consequences to it for the citizens because it doesn't put anything we're talking about into play. It basically gives us the confidence from the citizens in a strong voice when we go down and lobby the legislature and the decision makers and the governor with our strategies to swing their confidence in us. And we can't really get much done without the citizens behind us. So if we get a strong support of this, and that gives us the ability to continue to work on this, for one thing, we will continue to work with lobbyists in Madison, Capital Consultants, Bill McCaution, who's a rock star in Madison. He's a Superiorite. He gets things done down there. He'll work his magic with the legislature and the bipartisan support and the governor to the point where we'll get them to really take us seriously and look at this thing and see if they'd be willing to give us this permission to be successful. And if we're right about that and they come around and help us, we'll have to come back to the citizens again in April with a binding referendum, which will really say, hey, now they've really inked it. They're willing to put it in the budget in July, which would give us the tool. Still wouldn't impose it on the citizens. It's not going to be imposed until we're further down the line. This could be another 2 to 3 years. We don't know. But again, it's a start, and it's total transparency with the citizens, and it's democracy really the way it should be.
Okay, so for you to go to the assembly and meet with the powers that be and potentially Governor Walker, it's important for you to say, yes, the people of Superior support this.
Yes, to show them a strong referendum, yes, that they want to do this for themselves is a very strong tool to get something done in state government.
Okay. Bruce, there's a tendency for people to say no. It's easier to say no than it is to say yes. What are the consequences if the citizens of Superior say no to Better City Superior?
Well, the City of Superior's revenue has been flat for 8 years, and we did a little exercise and forecasted out for the next 10 years if the city's revenue stayed flat and if an average inflation rate of 3% was imposed. And if that were the case, over the next 10 years, we would lose in the aggregate the equivalent of 1 full year's budget of purchasing power. So again, $28 million of purchasing power over the next 10 years would be lost. So what does that tell you? If you do nothing, your expenses are going to eat you alive, and you're going to have to cut city services. The last thing we can afford to cut is police protection. We need more of it. The drugs and the crime is high per capita, second highest in the state. And we have old buildings, so we need fire protection. We need good fire protection because everything is so old here. So you're not going to cut there. Are you going to cut public works? Do you need the streets plowed? Certainly, city government's responsibility is to be efficient and make sure there's not waste in government, and that always needs to be paid attention to. And I think citizens need to pay attention to the city budget and make sure we're holding people accountable to running an efficient city government. But the realities of it is, you will have to see cuts in city services, whether that's filling potholes, whether that's having less police on the street, whatever, over the next 10 years if we don't grow the revenue side and if we aren't efficient about how we run our city government. So doing nothing will get you exactly where you fear, which would be higher taxes and lower value for those taxes, making us a less appealing community to anybody coming to this area.
Sounds like we'll become just the opposite of a better city.
That's right. That's a very good way to put it. Yep.
I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but is there any reason why a reasonable person would not vote yes on November 8th?
If they did not understand what it is, I guess. I wouldn't fault anybody for saying no if they weren't informed, because I think your natural tendency is, if you don't understand something, is to just say no, because that's the safe choice. And what's yes going to do to me if you don't know what it is? And so I don't believe that there's any reason that anybody should vote. There is absolutely no consequences to anyone. It just enables Better City to continue to work hard on our behalf to bring new economic development tools to town to make something happen. So call it, just a real entrepreneurial effort that has certain unknowns yet to it. But the citizens of Superior will have many more windows into it as it develops along the way, so that they're heard and that they are given more opportunity to understand it. Again, our website, bettercitiessuperior.org, our Expo District Superior.org websites, more information is out there. As we continue to be transparent with the media, we'll just continue to answer the questions, and we don't have all the answers.
Sure.
It's entrepreneurial.
So a yes vote more or less says, Bruce, keep working.
Keep working, that's right. keep asking the business community to support us financially and keep working, and everything that's done on our behalf is totally volunteer. We're hiring for the real brains and the marketing and the lobbying and all that sort of thing to get it to town, but we're doing it all on a volunteer basis.
Okay. Bruce, thank you very much for your time. Is there any last words that you'd like to share with the public about this?
Please vote yes on Tuesday. I would love to have a large win. They say down in Madison that a win is a win, and I just want to win big because everybody said we couldn't do it, and everybody said don't do it on a big election turnout because you run a chance to lose, and I say no. I say I want the people's opinion. I want a big turnout. If it's not going to go forward, I need a lot of people to tell me that, and if it is going to go forward, I want a lot of people to say yes.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.